Don't underestimate marketing when it comes to your game. It is so important. Marketing just goes so much deeper than just social media as well.
Great games invisible on the store. That is the problem in one sentence. My guest today is Jasmine, known also as the Atom Bomb Buddy. She's a VR content creator, educator, and founder of the VR Content Lab, a platform that teaches creators the technical side of VR content production. She worked directly with Gorilla Tag, one of the biggest games on the Quest store, and she has been from inside the creator and developer worlds, giving us a very clear picture of what is working, what is not, and exactly where most developers are leaving opportunity on the table. We will talk about what works and what doesn't today.
The Gorilla Tags and the animal companies, they are thriving and flourishing. Man, those teams are growing so fast. I mean, I honestly wouldn't rely specifically on hoping that people will find your game on the Quest store.
Successful strategy applied by indie developers to stand out.
I've seen a lot of solo devs that they don't have a social media quite yet for their development studio, but they are almost like an which can also work.
What are the actual costs you should budget for launching your game?
I would say usually around if you're, solo or very, very small team. If you are a serious indie or maybe you're a small studio, anywhere between is what you can expect.
But before we get into it, I wanted to remind you that if you don't have the time to watch the full interview and want to learn from other founders and creatives at the intersection between XR and AI, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this directly in your inbox and access to a list of tools and apps that allow you to experience Gaussian splatting in VR, on Quest, and Vision Pro. Just check the first link in the show description. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Jasmine under the spotlight. Jasmine, it's a real pleasure to have you here.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. And I want to say this on air too, and congratulations, and you're getting an Augie for AWE, Content Creator of the Year, everyone. So I feel like I wanted to just applaud you for that.
Thank you very much. I wish I had it here that I could show it. I don't, but that's for another story.
Soon.
It will count. It will count.
Yeah.
So, Jasmine, you have been in VR for years. I want your honest opinion. Where do we stand right now, especially when it comes to gaming?
It's a really interesting place. So it depends, honestly, I think, on the demographic that you talk to. If it's, let's call them old farts like me and above, for, I guess, total transparency, I'm like 34. You'll see sort of a lot of doom and gloom, especially on social media. And to be honest, some of it's pretty fair. We see a lot of big studios shutting down, massive layoffs. But on the flip side, when you see the games that I would say aren't really for us, right? Like the Gorilla Tags and the animal companies, UGG, those sorts of things, they are thriving and flourishing. Man, those teams are growing so fast. Even, you mentioned Gorilla Tag. They had GorillaCon. They had a physical place for this game, GorillaCon at VidCon. That was these past couple days. And it was massive. There were people, spending at least $100 plus on merch. They wanted to go meet their favorite YouTubers. They call them finger painters. Those are that top tier Gorilla Tag content creators. So I think it really depends on the demographic. We get stuck, I think, sometimes us old folks and thinking just because there's no games out there that I'm necessarily interested in right now, VR must be dying. But I think it's just we forget there's a new generation coming in and, interests change, things change.
And you personally, how do you cope up with it? How do you react to this? Also in the role of content creator, right? Do you, let's say, adapt, embrace, also maybe apply what has worked for you, what you have learned to then what is hot and upcoming? How do you do it?
For me, I think my personality works for it. I know it's not for everybody. Gorilla Tag specifically, personally not my kind of game. I don't think I'll be making content on that. But some of the more unhinged kind of ones, like the I Am series, the I Am Cats, that sort of thing, where I could just jump in, film a quick short. People can see another side of me that isn't so like Atom Bomb Body, the educator. Because I like to be fun and silly too. It's not, I know it might seem like I'm just doing it for content. But no, I actually really love being able to go in and just kind of cause chaos and do whatever I want. That's not to say I don't like, our story-based games and, co-op RPGs and that sort of thing too. But I will say these games are just so easy to go in and get quick content on. And I can see the appeal, but it is something that I understand. I can totally understand isn't for everybody.
There is also one thing. I think that when we talk about VR, we immediately imagine MetaQuest. But I mean, I think that PC VR, it's in a very different space than what is mobile Quest. What is your impression about that instead?
Definitely the PC VR enthusiasts, I would consider them more the hardcore users, especially when it comes to gaming. These are the people that are doing like UEVR modding, stuff that a kid might do. Like I know, when I was younger, I would try to kind of get into all of these things, but a lot of them now, if you think about it, don't even have computers. Like they don't even have a computer to be able to connect a PC VR headset to, let alone a Quest. So it's just different. I can see for the PC VR enthusiast how things are looking maybe a little bleak at the moment. But I think we just have to wait a little bit. A lot of these kids that are making the Gorilla Tag clone type of games, they're not going to stay kids forever. And in fact, I know for a fact that a lot of them are starting to experience growing pains where maybe they started on Gorilla Tag, Animal Company, what have you, but they kind of want to expand now to something else. And so it'll be really interesting to see what that something else is going to be, because they, some of them can stay in the same game forever, but a lot of them want to start getting sponsorships, and it's really hard when you're just a single game content creator. So the ceiling is going to have a cap. You know what I mean?
So then, are there some recent success stories that maybe people might not know about that goes beyond the Gorilla Tag, the UG? Is there something that stood out for you recently?
Beyond Gorilla Tag and UG, huh?
That's what I'm trying to get, because maybe you being in that deeper in that gaming space and know what other content creators are covering, maybe you know more.
Well, I mean, we are. I know it was super disappointing to hear, Meta when they shut down a bunch of studios we loved, but very recently, like Supernatural is a fitness app that has been near and dear to my heart. And in fact, the servers are still up technically, so I still use it, 6 days a week. They've actually come together and they're going to be forming an independent company separate from Meta. So I think the plan for that was like a new release sometime fall of this year. But I kind of hope to see that success from other companies that unfortunately maybe were really dependent on finances from Meta, that, if they could come together. But I do know Supernatural had just a huge fan base, and so that's going to look fantastic to investors, of course. But even we're still seeing some pretty decent IPs coming over to games. Like we've got Payday that's going to be coming out. We got Thief that came out recently. It is interesting to see that a lot of them are like flat games going into VR, which is, I don't think, necessarily a bad thing. If it helps with the recognizable brand, then, we'll take what we can get. But there are still some exciting things that are coming up. I wouldn't say it's dead.
So the other things and the reason why I think we are here talking is because you have, let's say, perfected the art of capturing content in some way in these experiences. So I would like to ask you, since I do it for different purpose, right? I mean, when I get in, I do it more just to share what's inside. And usually it's not about gaming. My question is like, what are the options nowadays for creating, let's say, content or sharing these experiences, either from the users or also from the developer perspective?
I don't know about perfect, but I try my best with what the tools that we're given. But I will always tell people, if you have a PC, capturing things on PC VR using something like OBS Studio and maybe OpenVR Capture, or, in a pinch, just even the Steam VR viewfinder, so much easier than if you're doing Quest Native. There are tools available for Quest Native, like, Quest has its own integrated capture tools that have luckily expanded over the years. You get more options now, like you can change the bit rate and frames per second, which you couldn't do in the beginning. And even things like Live Creator Kit, if certain games have it. So in a super quick nutshell, Live Creator Kit is sort of like if you think like a tablet in game, although each game can skin it differently. And from there, you can change different perspectives. So you can have like a third-person view, first-person view, or like sort of just a selfie mode. And within each of those modes, there's different settings you can change, like field of view, distance, things that are really creative and customizable that you can't do if you're just doing the typical meta casting where it's like, here's, headset movement, and that's all you're going to get pretty much.
Because in that, like, you can, for example, leave a camera in the space, and that camera, for example, might follow you, so you can have a different perspective of the scene that you are playing. But this requires the developers to build in this implementation.
Correct. There is Live Hub, which is sort of the streaming version of that. So if a game doesn't have Live Creator Kit, you can technically still stream, but you're going to get that regular, just headset view only. So there are ways around it, but ideally if the developer has the Live Creator Kit SDK, that's going to give you the most options for that. But again, going back to PC VR, though, even if you are a Quest native user, even using something like the MetaQuest Developer Hub, which I know sounds intimidating if you're not a developer, honestly, if you're just using the capture tools on it, it's not that bad. Granted, updates sometimes break different features on it, as does for most things, but just I feel bad because I always tell like the kids, like, just PC is so much easier when it comes to capturing things. But I know that, with RAM prices and everything else going crazy, like what kid's going to afford like a $2,000 computer?
And so I still find it fascinating, like that there is technically so little options to record what is happening in the headset. Like, if there wasn't this thing from Live, and of course there is a small portion of games that support this, right? The only option really is to record a shaky first-person perspective, more or less, right? You can try to be very focused. And usually one thing I try to do is use my head as a camera. So I don't think that I am actually exactly, right? You do you do these weird moves. That is like, it does works because it does work. You need to do this kind of like weird ninja move. But it is, why you think there isn't something like this built by Meta, built by, within Unity, right? There must be something. And is that the reason?
I will say, I am grateful. Unfortunately, this isn't really something that's possible on Meta, on the Quest standalone games, but specifically when PC VR games on Steam, they enable like a smoother capture mode within the game settings, so that if you enable that in the game, like I know ExoShock very recently, they're not out yet, but their demo even had that, which was impressive. You enable it, and then once you add the game capture in OBS Studio, it's a much smoother output versus like if you were to usually if you just add the game's output by default into OBS, it's weirdly like zoomed in and overblown and it's just awful. But it's not something I think that a lot of developers think of naturally, right? And it makes sense because you just want to work on getting the game out and hope, that people actually buy it. So capture tools and marketing, especially for a lot of these indie developers, kind of come secondary as a thought. But man, I'll tell you, it's for the games that add it, it's super handy and it helps so much. And that's I look at that instantly in the settings. Besides changing locomotion, I see if there's some sort of way to be able to have a smooth output capture if they have it. So any developers out there that did that, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Because indeed, I think that when we think about creating content or videos, there is indeed the option of being you in there with a headset. There is these tools that are provided by Live, right? With this extra camera, selfie mode, non-selfie mode, and whatever. There is always what I think is the option to, especially when in a multiplayer game, or maybe when they support a web viewer, to have the camera from the outside, like from the web, or maybe you have an extra person that behaves like the camera while the others are acting out, whatever it is. This is also a way that people can create, also developers, their own trailers, their own content. There is then the high end, right? Especially now, we're talking about mixed reality. Can you tell us a little bit what is the minimum requirement in order to get some nice, neat mixed reality capture where there is, and I'm referring a bit of a mix of the environment, for example, and the game footage. I'm talking about maybe some of the popular game like, I don't know, Wall Towns, Wonders, or something like this. What is the minimum needed to achieve an effect like that?
So the word mixed reality has kind of changed a lot, and coming from Liv, that can mean two different things. Do you mean mixed reality as in like the gameplay capture, or mixed reality as in when you're putting yourself inside of a game, kind of like the Beat Saber players?
Let's do both.
Let's do both.
So let's imagine that I want a Beat Saber like where there is just a silhouette of the person that is inside the environment, the game, that scenario. What would it take to put something like that together?
That definitely you're going to need PC VR for. There's currently, Liv had experimented for a while with like a mobile Quest native sort of mixed reality thing that did not go well. It's one of the most frequently requested that we bring back, but it was not good. So you're definitely going to need a PC that can not only withstand VR, but basically doubling the compute power, because you're going to be not only playing the game, but you're also going to need to be outputting it, onto, I use OBS Studio as an example. But it's also, you're going to need a lot of patience. Like, don't do what I did and immediately go crazy, and paint your walls green. I only did this because I did it a lot and it became convenient for me. But I think where people struggle most, especially, is when it comes to keying. You don't realize like, oh, you're going to need decent lighting to be able to make sure you don't get any of that grainy chroma key effects. And there are, AI has gotten a bit better. Like you can use, NVIDIA Broadcast has their sort of auto background removal that you can technically put into Liv, and it helps. But I guess it depends on how much of a stickler for quality that you are too, because it's still not perfect. You're gonna get that artifacting around the edges. So mixed reality in that sense, like what you see the Beat Saber players do, is not necessarily for the faint of heart. You're gonna need, like, I have a DSLR that you use, but I started off with a webcam. So I always recommend, start off cheap. Webcam. I had clamp lights with parchment paper that I just like put wherever I could, just to see if you are willing to go through that work before you upgrade to maybe like LED panel lights, or maybe, special mounts for cameras, or even like putting a tracker on your camera. If you have a second person, then you could do all kinds of like tracked shots. But don't deep dive into getting the most expensive stuff first, because it is a lot of work, and you might realize like, oh, this is more than I bargained for.
So what about the other type of mixed reality? So let's imagine mixed reality where there is the majority of the scene is made by reality, in the sense like your living room, but then there is digital stuff popping here and there. Maybe there is a portal. How can that be achieved?
So unfortunately, there's not many great solutions for that. I mean, there's still default capture in headset. MetaQuest Creator Hub is usually what I have been using for that, because I do have access to a PC. But when it comes to like Liv Creator Kit, they never really figured out a way yet to be able to have pass through in with the recording, if that makes sense. So what some developers have done is they've actually replaced the pass through with like a skybox in the recording itself, if that makes sense. But again, that's going to take some extra work, but in my opinion is worth it. But that's where we kind of had stopped with Liv. Last I was there was like trying to figure out, okay, how can we, like, are we going to get access to the cameras so that we can be able to record mixed reality, have access to the pass-through cameras? Didn't quite get there yet. So that's still, I think, a big thorn, in capturing mixed reality gameplay, that kind of mixed reality gameplay.
Yeah, and I know that, for example, there are developers that have added this kind of like multiplayer mode just to have a second player that is in also the mixed reality, and use technically the headset as a second camera instead of doing all complicated things and superimposing. Of course, if you want to create some probably high-end mixed reality trailer, yes, that's not enough. But in the sense, like hacking it a bit together for the sake of a trailer, then I think does a pretty decent job.
I mean, it's it's the best you're gonna get. Unless you have hired like one of the super high-end productions teams to be able to do that for you, like as a solo dev. Yeah, it just sucks that that's what we have to do. Is you got to get like luckily I do have other Quest headsets I can use, but I've done similar where my husband is just another camera essentially, and we'll have to go back and forth between views. So hopefully in that front, especially when it comes to mixed reality, we'll see some improvements. So if you're a developer out there, there might be, there's a need.
So when it comes, for example, for developers, to the budget needed to create content for their games, right? This could be seen as I'm making a trailer, or maybe, hey, I'm hiring a content creator to do a coverage. What are the budget that a team, maybe solo developers or whoever is producing a game to put on the store can expect? Can you give us some high-level ranges?
I would say usually a good starting point would be around 25 to 50% of what you've previously spent making the game. But I guess to maybe put that into specific dollar terms, if you are sort of like a low budget indie, the range is hard because everyone's got different levels of what they're spending in order to make the game. Some might be zero, but I would say usually around 5,000 to 25,000 starting. If you're, solo or very, very small team, maybe like, 10 or 5-10 people or less. And that's mostly going to be for if you want a professional trailer made, but even those can be pretty expensive, and some marketing spend, as in, you want to maybe have some content creators make sponsored posts or ads on social media. But in many cases, you can actually combine both. Like TikTok has Spark. So if you work with a content creator to make a sponsored post, you can then sort of boost that post as an ad. But that's going into more complicated specific marketing. But if you are, I guess we'll call, let's say like a serious indie, or maybe you're a small studio, anywhere between 25,000 to 100,000 is what you can expect, I would say. But again, it depends on, like, that trailer is probably going to be where most of your money goes if you just do decide to outsource that, which I recommend. I think we've all seen some game trailers where like the game probably would have been fun, but the trailer's filmed at like 30 FPS or something.
This is another interesting thing. I mean, I do have a firm believer that it's important to communicate that. On the other hand, nowadays, the trailer on the store has this kind of like a weird position. It's a bit overlapped by other icons. And so my question is a bit like, how sure that you get this ROI on a trailer? Like, what was your past experience with launching a game? Maybe we can mention trailer, but then we can look also at other type of content.
I mean, I honestly wouldn't rely specifically on hoping that people will find your game on the Quest store. Like, that shouldn't be, your first funnel. You should be promoting this outside sources on social media as much as possible, because discovery on the Quest store is not great. And if you're on Steam, that can also be super overwhelming. So you really, I keep stressing this very importantly to a lot of studios, but you need to have a presence on social media. That doesn't have to mean, I've seen a lot of solo devs that maybe they don't have a social media quite yet for their development studio, but they are almost like an influencer themselves. Like we see this a lot with Anton, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, Hand Grenades, where they almost are their brand themselves, which can also work. But you please do not rely on just being randomly discovered on the Quest or Steam store. Like, that's not going to work, unfortunately.
So how else? Because social media is also wild, right? I mean, in a sense, like, if I am a team of 5-10 people, and mostly we are working on the game, right? That means that we don't have someone that does marketing that is dedicated to that. What are the ways in which you can kind of like start being seen? Depending also on the type of game, because that is also a different ball game, right? When I have, let's say, a social game, I can use certain growth tactics, and probably I'm also targeting a certain type of audience when I'm creating something that is maybe, I don't know, maybe story driven or sport or another type of game. I'm dealing with a different type of audience. So what has worked, what hasn't worked based on your experience?
What hasn't worked is doing nothing, of course. But I would say knowing your audience, and that can be hard because maybe you don't have one quite yet. But at least if you can compare your game's genre to another game that's already been out, even if it's a flat game, you can kind of start to reach out at least to those creators that have, well, I guess there's a lot of different branches we can go, but I'll talk specifically about, if you want to reach out to a content creator for coverage, find creators that have made games in a very similar genre that you're making. So maybe you're making like a cozy art type of game. You've got Painting VR, Vermilion, Color a Cube. Look, it's going to take some time, and it's either time or money. Either you can go to someone like Impact Reality or Noetic, one of those talent managers, and just have them do the work for you if you have money. Or you're going to have to do a little bit of research on your own. Go on YouTube, go on TikTok, go on Instagram. Well, if you're doing, and also consider the audiences for each platform. So Instagram tends to skew a little older. I want to say 30 and higher. Very beautiful, artsy type games, or like Subside, that kind of stuff would work really well there. But if you are doing like a game that you are gearing towards younger kids, maybe it's cartoony, gorilla taggy, I am cat, whatever, then yes, TikTok is going to be your friend here. YouTube Shorts, I would say, is very variable. No matter which platform you end up deciding, you should still be on YouTube anyway, because the age range there is much more flexible than some of the other platforms. But I feel bad because there is just so much information out there. And if you're like a solo developer, I know that you're just trying to make the game and get it out there. But, don't forget to take, maybe if you have to budget that time out of creating the actual game, spend 2 hours each day being able to do that research, writing down people that you think you want to reach out to. And don't feel discouraged that you have to put up money, when you're asking these creators to cover your game. A lot of them, if they really love it, if it's in their wheelhouse, they'll be happy to cover it for free. So, but yeah, I guess it also depends on their subscriber number as well.
There is also the other point. I think that so the most effective is, as you mentioned, finding these developers that keep sharing and become their own brand, right? So they share experiment, they share, oh, look at the improved physics of the game. Oh, look at the new skins we have made. Oh, look at how the eyes now explode because it's broken, but it's funny, right? And so even all these fails are totally fine.
Yeah.
I would also argue that the other important part of doing this is that you realize if the game sticks in some way before it's out. So
yes,
because that is the other important thing. If it is not resonating with anybody in any possible way, there should ring a bell, an alarm bell. It says like, ooh, are we sure that this is really the way we want to go? I think this is another important aspect. But the question that I had also was like, short form, do they work? Like, because I have a bit like love and hate relationship with this. What's your experience? Do people watch them? How do you get the people to watch, to act, and wish list or go to your quest page? The jump is huge.
It is, especially with platforms like TikTok that don't want to link anything everywhere, or anywhere rather. But for those platforms, it's sort of more I don't want to call it spray and pray because that sounds negative, but you want to get, especially if you're going to be marketing a game specifically, because there's a difference on if you're, content creator trying to grow versus a developer trying to sell a game. You're gonna want a lot of shorts, and expect that even if you plaster that name of your game, right in the front of the video, people are still going to be asking in the comments, what's the game name? Is it free? But I will say, if they are asking questions, that's also a good signifier that they're interested. It's still engagement. It may not be the most intelligent of engagement ever, but it's a good signifier to you. Sort of like you were saying, to your point that if you get, nothing for a while, not really many views, no one's really asking any questions, that's also a signal of maybe this just isn't, hitting anybody, or maybe it's not hitting the right audience, and it's also something to consider. But short form, I would say, is more for exposure. So you may not necessarily get a lot of those wish lists, but once the game's out, and maybe once you have that big splash of like, we're out, or we're out of early access, or what have you, because they've seen this game so many times on their feed, they're going to remember it, and they're going to be more likely to be able to click and buy it out of familiarity. Even from the content creator perspective, it's like, don't expect to make money off of shorts. Like, it's mostly for, gaining followers and subscribers that will hopefully convert into, paying customers, which sounds weird, but like, ad revenue for longer form content, or if you have a product, eventually they'll hopefully go down that road with you. But yeah, it's interesting. Short form content's gotten interesting.
Yes, and so still about shorts, right? What kind of story do you tell? Like, in a sense, because every short is different, right? I mean, you can create a trailer, you can create, if you're building a game with nice environment, you can show the environments. If you're building a game with some action, you can show some action. But are there maybe like some formats that maybe have worked for a specific game, something that you can share that has worked in the past for a specific title?
Yes. I will say, no matter what genre you cover, because maybe you're not doing something that's a silly game, maybe it's a beautiful game, but you need the most exciting part of whatever footage you want to show right up front, like literally the first 2 seconds. Because imagine that your audience are all just really ADHD, super ADHD. So if they don't see anything interesting within those first couple seconds, there's millions of other videos that they're just going to swipe off to. So I know sometimes we tend to want to lead into the good parts, like make a story, have some narrative in it, but you really need that most interesting part right at the beginning, and then maybe you can add some details. But don't go crazy. You still keep it very short. I would say 30 seconds max, and even that might be stretching it, as quickly as possible that you can make it. Because if someone gets through the whole video, regardless of the length, that's going to be a good signifier to the algorithm to help push it further, versus if it's like a 30-second video and they're leaving after 10 seconds. That's fine, but it's not going to be pushed out as much by the algorithm. So there's just little things like that no matter what genre you're doing, these are like super important when it comes to shorts.
The other thing is that there was, for some time ago, actually, I was working with the team at Painting VR, since you mentioned, and we were actually, as short form, we were trying to look at other type of real world painters or channels were doing. Look, so there was this, like, for example, cartoony realistic, or like God, like newbie pro God, and there was this same painting made in different styles. So what we're trying to do is trying to adapt what was working for a same niche but in the real world, and try to make it same thing but in VR. So I don't know if that applies. How could that be applied? The point is a bit to try to find things that kind of like work in other channel or in other, and try to readapt or repurpose. Because indeed, of course, as you said, the first 3 seconds are key. Try to be surprising, funny, or whatever way you can. But even that, there are ways that other channels have been trying to do it. Do some competitive research, see other games that are in your same niche and see how they are trying to do. Look at outliers in their channel. Look what are the videos that perform better, and maybe try to see, hey, can we repurpose using our own content? That is always very tricky. But short is such a gamble, and it's like
it really is. And it's also trends that you can look into too. And I say that carefully, because not all trends will be right for your game. So don't feel like oh, we should just make a content using this trend because it's trending, because it's not going to look good. It's going to be super cringy and like you're trying too hard. But if you see one, and oh, I see a lot of people are doing, gosh, this is going to make me sound old, but like the ice bucket challenge. And for some reason that really does fit in your game somehow, or with your team, people are starting to become familiar. If you do a lot of behind the scenes stuff and people are knowing like, this is the art person and this is the so-and-so, then maybe, but don't feel like we need to do this because it's trending and it's going to make us go viral. Like, not everything works. Not everything works. Among Us did it really well. Even though they're like a flat, well, they did have VR, but you know what I mean? Like they banked on a lot of trends and did it really well. But they also have a huge team, so I don't know if that's
That applies
necessarily
because
as a fair
that's the
comparison.
risk, like, oh yeah, look at how the games, yeah, but like there's completely different scale here, right?
Yeah.
People know Among Us, nobody knows X game, right? So this is very different. That is the other pitfall, especially CEOs and whoever or investors. They look, no, but look at how they did it. Yeah, but this is not the same thing. I mean, look, yeah, sure.
It's gonna come out super cringy. Like, even though I'm not young, but I at least know what young people would probably not like, and that's when old people are trying to act young.
But so where do you stand you instead as a content creator, right? In this time that has passed and had to, let's say, adapt the kind of content you produce, how have you behaved and kind of like adapted to this changing landscape?
Well, I feel like I enjoy doing both long form and short form content, and I've sort of had to figure out like, okay, maybe certain games actually would do better on short form than on long form. Like, I don't know if I could do a long form on something like I Am Cat. Some people can, but it's actually really helped because now it's given me more options. Or maybe for Color a Cube, for example, people may not necessarily want to sit there and watch like a 15-minute thing of me, just pushing it's satisfying, but maybe not satisfying to watch. But in a short, you can really speed that up, show the finished product, show the different types of puzzles people can make. And it's much better. But so I've almost kind of split the types of content I do. The tutorials, of course, will always be long form. That's where they live. But I almost get to let another side of me come out when I do shorts. Like, because I'm a gamer at heart. I love playing games and I still get to do that content, but just in short form where I don't have to spend as much time, editing a 15-minute video. So it's nice. I can still get content out and feel like I'm, being regular with a cadence without having to, like, again, spend so long in the editing studio with long forms.
So the other thing I've seen, right, that you are also focusing and put up a course. So also helping others creating content. I mean, how does that work? What kind of people have joined, for example, the course? What's the high level overview? Maybe can you share something about it?
So, in general, the idea for VR Content Lab was something knocking around in my head for a long time. I wanted a place for people who are like, yes, I've already maybe gotten into VR content a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm growing in a meaningful way. And this is something that I can see myself potentially making money off of, or is this something I really want to get into seriously? Not like that's someone who's decided it's past hobby or I guess a serious hobby. That's fine too. We'll accept you. But it's mostly a course that breaks down not only the technical, the Live Creator Kit, OBS Studio, that sort of things, but also the marketing side. Like, what kind of content are you going to cover? And most importantly, what audience is it that you're going to want to reach out? And being okay with the fact that, a lot of times we start out and we're like, well, I want to attract everybody, but that's terrible because then you're going to attract nobody. Nobody's going to relate to you when you're trying to attract everybody. But even things like mental health as a content creator, facing things like burnout, and just being okay with not posting for a week or two and worrying that your channel will die or what have you. So I try to cover, there's still more that of course needs to be added. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm like, I want to rearrange some things and make it easier. But my goal was to put all of the, the technical and the marketing and sort of the mental health, not a psychiatrist. So it's just more of like a, disclaimer there. all into one place for somebody who does want to take this more seriously, maybe get sponsorships, maybe, grow more. And I will say defining an audience for this has been challenging, though, because by current audience, the current students for VR Content Lab, they're all adults. I don't know their exact age, but just based on their channels and content, they seem to be, 25 and up. But there is, on another hand, where it's like this could reach out to there are a ton, millions and millions of Gorilla Tag Animal Company kids out there. All of them want to be like the next J-Man Curly. So it could be an avenue I pursue, but at the same time, they're the, is it free kids? And I don't know how much they necessarily want to pay for more school. Yeah, it is just like, that doesn't sound like a fun way to spend their money at that age. So I will say that probably a market fit is something that I'm still going through right now, but I'm very happy with where it currently is with current students and all that.
And so maybe also, does that cover also some part of like streaming? Because I mean, content creator and creating videos you can be a content creator and never have streamed once, right? Or the other way around, you are a content creator, the only thing you do is just stream while you play. What percentage does that play? Is that 50-50? Like, where do these students
in the
stand?
Course itself?
Yeah,
or with
course,
students?
Let's say. Yeah.
In the course, I definitely cover streaming too, because that's almost a different beast, because you're live. It's definitely more community building, and also accepting that things are going to go wrong because it's a VR stream. Compared to when you stream flat screen, and it's just so much easier. So that's definitely in there. And what I found was kind of interesting. I thought I would get more YouTubers and TikTokers, and a lot of the students have those, but a lot of them are actually Twitch streamers, again, because they're more of the adult, I want to say, audience. So a lot of them were Twitch streamers that came over to try to see how they could, help grow their audience, which was interesting. I didn't predict that, but I also to be completely honest, haven't streamed like in a while, just because I want to dedicate the time, have a regular schedule if I do that again. And all the other marketing stuff I've been doing is getting in the way. But it's still, it can be an important avenue, like especially for getting closer to your community. Heck, more developers could even do it if they had time. I think that it could be, a really good way to actually get to know the people or the potential people that might buy your game.
So I think we went full circle, and to close up, right? You went back to the developers because that's a lot on them. So maybe if you could give one last advice to them right now that they are either they're building a social games, or maybe they're building a more story driven or something like this. What advice would you give, given the current landscape? There is stuff that is happening, right? There is the Steam Frame. It's around the corner, should be here any moment. We do have other headset, maybe not for gaming yet, that are approaching, like from Pico, for example. So I wouldn't say VR is down this let's say settling phase, like trying to figure out and see what happens. What would be your advice for developers?
Don't underestimate marketing when it comes to your game. It is so important. I've seen so many developers that actually had really cool games, but no one had heard of them because they just sort of like publish and then and then it's out there. But maybe, and I know it's difficult, and I know social media is also can be super toxic and not the greatest environment, but maybe take a take a course. VR Content Lab is mostly geared towards content creators, but it probably could still help you a little bit as well if you want to, especially be like a sort of an influencer dev. But Udemy, there's just a lot of even free YouTube videos. There's a lot of courses if you're just like, how does TikTok work, or insert platform here. But maybe set time aside, even if it's an hour. Add that onto whatever time you spend developing. Like, just set aside an hour just to learn about the platform. Really consider the audience that you want your game to reach, and figure out who those people are out there. What are they looking for? What are their wants? What are they struggling with? How can your game potentially solve these things? And that's going to just take you so much far. So marketing just goes so much deeper than just social media as well, but that could be like a book.
So, Jasmine, thank you very much. I think that there is a lot to learn. It was a real pleasure. And again, I cannot just echo what Jasmine said. think about your marketing, think about your communication, because you can put years into a game, and then if it doesn't get out there, that's a real shame for your hard work. So Jasmine, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page, xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.